Hi students, in today's discussion on daily dose, what we are going to attempt is a passage based on philosophy. So it's going to be pretty interesting. And the two philosophies that we are going to discuss are hedonism and Epicureanism. So the distinction between the two, that is the focus of the discussion. Now let's see. The common understanding of hedonism is often relegated to the domain of the carnal. Take a brief pause. You've attempted this passage. Now let's try to recall. The common understanding of hedonism is often relegated. So it is often basically boiled down to the domain of the carnal. Carnal refers to the body, a frantic, desperate pursuit of sensory gratification. That's how hedonism is presented. That it's a frantic, hurried, desperate pursuit of sensory gratification. That hedonism is all about sensory gratification, frenetic, frantic pursuit of satisfying your senses. Gratification is satisfaction. In the collective imagination, the hedonist is a glutton who eats a lot, who has a large appetite, a figure defined by unquenchable thirst. So has got a large appetite, has got unquenchable thirst of the ephemeral. Ephemeral is something which keeps, fleeting. That means it is momentary. It is momentary. So every moment the hedonist chases sensory gratification, wants the satisfaction of senses, forever chasing the next spike of dopamine. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter which gives you a high, So basically, the hedonist is always chasing these sensory highs. It is against this backdrop of perceived excess. So there is perceived excess in hedonism. That Epicureanism is frequently miscategorized. So the writer says that there is miscategorization of Epicureanism as a mere variant of the same impulse. So quite often Epicureanism gets miscategorized, gets misplaced as a mere variant, as only just another variant, of the same hedonistic impulse of sensory gratification. However, Epicureanism is shown to be somewhat different by the writer. However, to equate the two is to mistake the container for the contents. That means, students, after this, however, the writer is showing that there is a contrast between the two. While both philosophies prioritize pleasure, the Epicurean project is fundamentally an architecture of subtraction rather than addition. Both prioritize pleasure. Both philosophies talk about the pleasure principle, but the Epicurean philosophy, Epicurean project is basically deleting, subtracting that pleasure rather than adding to it. Let's see what it means. Where vulgar hedonism posits pleasure as the presence of intense stimulation. So vulgar hedonism talks about what? Talks about pursuing pleasure and focusing on intense stimulation. Epicureanism conceptualizes it as the removal of agitation. That is how students Epicureanism conceptualizes pleasure. That when you remove agitation from your life, when there is no agitation, no disturbance, no dissonance in your life, a state of atraxia has been reached. That is what pleasure is. Epicurus did not advocate for expansion of desires. He did not say that you can keep on enhancing your desires, expanding your desires. Rather, he championed the restriction of desires. The restriction of desires. When you're parsimonious, that is when you spend less. That is when are more of. That is when you are more of a miser. So you are restricting your desires by untethering the individual from the cycle of craving. That means disassociating the individual from the cycle of craving and disappointment. The Epicurean path seeks not the high of indulgence. So it does not walk the path of indulgence, it walks the path of equilibrium of non suffering. So, students, in the Epicurean philosophy, non suffering is basically the pleasure that they are looking for. That pleasure means the absence of suffering, non suffering. That is how the Epicurean philosophy conceptualizes the pleasure principle, the calculus of pleasure. Read further. Employed here is counterintuitive. How is it counterintuitive? one must often reject immediate gratification. Generally, we assume that gratification leads to pleasure, that when we satisfy our senses, that is what leads to pleasure. However, the calculus of pleasure, which is used in Epicurean philosophy, is somewhat different. It says reject immediate gratification, reject immediate pleasure to avoid compounding future misery. So your future misery gets compounded, it gets increased if you keep chasing immediate satisfaction. So maintain some balance, don't chase immediate gratification. That is what Epicurean philosophy is. It's a philosophy that requires profound, deep, profound, almost ascetic level of discernment. You need to discern, and separate. You need to figure out, use your good sense, use your discretion, and separate the natural and necessary from the vain and empty. So, Epicurean philosophy says chase the natural and the necessary pleasures, chase the natural and necessary gratification, the natural satisfaction. Don't chase empty satisfaction, don't chase vain, empty satisfaction. Let's read further, students. So it talks about maintaining balance, removal of agitation, that you should maintain an equilibrium. And what kind of equilibrium? Where you're not suffering much. And that's how they conceptualize pleasure. That pleasure is removal of agitation, a state of atraxia, where there is less of disappointment. And why is there less of disappointment? Because you are not chasing each and every high. Does that make sense? Let's read further. The divergence is stark. The writer believes that the two philosophies are really quite different. The divergence between the two philosophies is really very serious. It is really very stark. The hedonist surrenders to the object of desire. Students, take a brief pause and you will be able to understand what I am discussing. With this background that we have built in the last two paragraphs, you will be able to understand the third one. Take a pause. Hedonist surrenders to the object of desire. However, Epicurean, conversely, views unchecked desire as a volatile master. So, Epicureanism says desire must not be unchecked, because unchecked desire, unrestricted desire, is a volatile master. Cultivate a lifestyle of simplicity. That's what they say. By cultivating a modest, simple lifestyle, intellectual companionship, and avoidance of public turmoil, a lot of chaos. When you avoid all these things, a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos, a lot of ballyhoo, that is when the Epicurean secures a fortress against volatility of fortune. So your fortune does not necessarily mean money. Fortune, that means even if things are not going your way, then too you are secure. Because you have disconnected yourself from chasing all your desires. You have sort of minimalized your desires. You have achieved a state of balance. It is not that they reject pleasure. Hold on. The writer says Epicureanism does not reject pleasure. Listen to me very, very carefully. It is not that they reject pleasure, but they recalibrate its origins. Balance, recalibration. Where does my pleasure originate from? What gives me real happiness? The natural and the necessary. Team, the natural and the necessary desires should be chased. That sort of pleasure should be chased. A while ago we read that. The natural and necessary. They do not seek to maximize the intensity of experience, but try to stabilize its quality. Stabilization, balance, moderation. The pursuit of quiet life is a tactical withdrawal, a deliberate tactical withdrawal. You are pursuing a quiet life. You are not pursuing a lifestyle of turmoil and agitation and sensory gratification. You have withdrawn yourself somewhat. You have become somewhat detached. They curate their existence to minimize the friction of the world. So they believe in minimizing the friction of the world. They treat happiness as a sanctuary one maintains, a safe, protected, calm place where one maintains, rather than a bonfire one seeks to fuel. So a bonfire, a celebration, that is the hedonist way. Out here, the Epicurean way is a calm sanctuary of happiness. Yes or no? So Epicurean equilibrium remains self-sustaining because it is balanced. That is why it is self-sustained. Equilibrium. So Epicurean philosophy advocates moderation, equilibrium, balance, a steady state that persists even when external world offers little to celebrate. Even when there isn't much to celebrate, you still remain somewhat happy because that equilibrium balances you. It is self-sustaining. This is the hallmark of resilient consciousness. So your consciousness is resilient. One that values consistency of contentment, that your contentment, your satisfaction must be consistent over the volatile peaks of momentary satisfaction. Momentary satisfaction, volatile satisfaction, that is the hedonist way. I hope you have understood each and every aspect now. Now let's attempt the questions. The first question reads, how does the passage progress in its logical construction? So what is the logical construction, team? Take a brief pause and then you will see the answer is, now I'm revealing the answer. The answer is option D. It establishes a common misconception. What was that common misconception? In the very first paragraph, it was mentioned that there is a misconception, hedonism and Epicureanism, the two philosophies, the hedonist perspective and the Epicurean perspective. Team, the hedonist perspective and the Epicurean perspective are different. However, there is a miscategorization. In the first paragraph, we looked at a miscategorization. What was that miscategorization? That Epicureanism was considered to be a mere impulse, a mere variant of the hedonist impulse. So that was the miscategorization. Then there was a complete comparison of the two philosophies, how the two philosophies are different from each other. One pursues balance, which is the Epicurean way. It pursues balance, it pursues moderation. However, students, the hedonist way pursues sensory gratification, unrestricted, uncontrolled sensory gratification. So the complete framework of how these philosophies are different from each other, that was presented. And towards the end, there were the details, the lifestyle resulting from this distinction, and details, the lifestyle resulting from this distinction. Look at the last paragraph. It clearly talks about the lifestyle. It clearly talks about the Epicurean lifestyle and the hedonist lifestyle and how they are different from one another. The Epicurean lifestyle is a self-sustaining lifestyle. The Epicurean lifestyle is where you minimize the friction of the world. Yes or no? The hedonist lifestyle, team, the hedonist lifestyle is the one of momentary satisfaction, where you're chasing the peaks of sensory gratification. Hedonist lifestyle is where one surrenders to desire. So the complete details the lifestyle resulting from this distinction. So that's how the passage progresses. Shall we move ahead, students? Let's look at the next question. Which of the following is most likely to be the topic of the next paragraph? There were two options that seem to be somewhat close. In fact, three. We need to discuss three out here. In the previous question, it was very, very clear. The progression was absolutely clear. Over here, how can we eliminate D? Students, economic behavior, calculus of pleasure has been discussed, so we can continue discussing that. However, can be applied specifically to economic behavior. We don't get any such clue. That the passage may move in the direction of applying the calculus of pleasure to economic behavior. That's what makes D incorrect. Now, what is the issue in A, which seemed to be absolutely the right option, but there is some problem, students. A comparison of the Epicurean theme of renunciation of pleasure and Stoic theme of excess. It has already happened, already been done. It has already been done in great detail. So the next paragraph will not discuss the same thing which has already been discussed in the second paragraph very thoroughly. Very thoroughly. The comparison of the two philosophies has already been done in great detail. In fact, the passage has moved on from there to show the kind of lifestyle which results from this distinction. So the next paragraph cannot go back and discuss the same thing which has been comprehensively, totally dealt with. So, what is the answer, team? The answer is option C. Potential practical challenges or criticisms regarding the implementation of the Epicurean fortress in a modern hyperconnected world. That means in a contemporary world, the fortress that you have built, the fortress that the Epicureans have built. What kind of fortress, team? The fortress where they keep themselves safe, where they maintain their sanity, where happiness becomes a sanctuary, where happiness is seen as a sanctuary that one maintains, the fortress, the safe place, the safe haven that one maintains. Now, in the next paragraph, we can keep discussing how easy, students, how easy or how difficult maintaining this fortress is in today's modern world. So we have talked about how the Epicurean philosophy advocates that you must maintain moderation, you must maintain balance, and you must try to preserve your happiness. So you maintain a fortress of happiness. But what are the challenges in maintaining this fortress? How easy, how difficult it is to do so, or the criticisms surrounding that in today's environment, in today's world. That's why students C is the best option. Let's read further. All of the following can be inferred except, that means we have to look for that option which cannot be inferred, which cannot be concluded from this particular discussion. And students, what is the answer now? The answer is option B. Now, it seemed to be the right inference, but there is some issue. Team, B can't be the answer because B cannot be inferred. B cannot be inferred because it has got alien information. It's not an inference which can be derived from the passage. C. Let's read it together and you will find it out yourself. Epicurean philosophy advocates moderation in sensory pleasure as a means to attain, Till this point of time, everything is in consonance with the passage. Everything is in complete coordination with the passage. Yes, Epicurean philosophy, it does advocate moderation. It says that you must minimize to some extent the sensory pleasure. Don't chase gratification all the time. But spiritual enlightenment was nowhere discussed. Spiritual enlightenment was nowhere discussed. That the Epicurean philosophy says that you must moderate your sensory pleasure so as to accomplish spiritual enlightenment. Students, the goal, spiritual enlightenment as the goal, spiritual enlightenment as the goal of Epicureanism, as the objective of Epicureanism was not discussed anywhere. So this is alien information that the goal is spiritual enlightenment. That's what makes B the answer. It's an inference that we cannot draw. Let's read further. All the following, if true, would undermine, that means work against, would weaken, except, that means one will not weaken. All the following would weaken, would undermine, except. Students, whenever you come across such questions where the word except is there, please take a brief pause, take a deep breath and then analyze. Otherwise, if you miss out, if you miss reading this word except, the whole question goes wrong. Your understanding goes in a different direction altogether. So students, now I'm going to reveal the answer. What is that? The answer is option A. The path to embracing Epicurean ideals is fraught with challenges that test one's perseverance. Now let's see. B, C, and D. Students, B, C, and D would weaken the Epicurean argument. How? Let's first of all analyze them. Psychological data demonstrating that human beings are incapable. That means it is beyond them. Human beings are incapable of sustained happiness in the absence of high intensity sensory stimulation. If human beings cannot be happy, if their happiness is impossible, incapable says that they cannot be happy, that happiness for them is impossible if they are detached or dissociated from sensory stimulation. Then the whole Epicurean project, comes crashing down. How does it come crashing down? Because Epicurean philosophy is based on the idea, students, it is based on the idea that even by minimizing your sensory gratification, you can still be happy. Even when you subtract your sensory pleasure, even when you sort of reduce sensory excitement, you can still remain happy by maintaining balance, by maintaining moderation. But B says no, human beings are totally incapable of happiness in the long run if this sensory stimulation is not there. Then Epicureanism gets completely undermined. Let's read further. C says neurological study indicating that the suppression of desire, so suppression of desire, which subtraction of desire, which happens in the Epicurean philosophy because it advocates that you must suppress your desires to some extent. Suppression of desire causes long-term psychological stress. If it causes long-term psychological stress, then students' Epicurean philosophy stops working. Then the Epicurean will not be satisfied, will not be happy in the long run. Why? Because it causes him psychological stress in the long run if he suppresses his desires. So if that happens, then the Epicurean philosophy, is shown to be the one which causes problems and not the one which alleviates stress. So let's read further. D. The pursuit of calculus of pleasure leads to social isolation. Shorter lifespan and lower happiness. If that happens, then of course the whole concept of Epicureanism advocating balance, moderation of desire, and the related aspects for pursuing sustained happiness, the whole project collapses because it says that you become socially isolated, your lifespan gets reduced, your happiness also gets reduced. Then Epicureanism fails completely. Let's read A. Why does it not undermine? It does not weaken. How? The path to embracing Epicurean ideals is fraught with challenges that test one's perseverance. A only says that if you follow Epicurean ideals, challenges will be there. And these challenges will test your perseverance, they will test your persistence. So even if these challenges test your persistence and you meet these challenges and you pass these challenges, then Epicureanism will bring you happiness. So A does not weaken, because A only says that it's not easy. It does not say that Epicureanism does not bring you happiness, it does not bring you pleasure. It only says that this path is somewhat challenging, is somewhat difficult, and you need to have persistence. So even if persistence takes you there, Epicureanism is still a path that you can follow, because A does not say that it is not going to bring you pleasure. A does not say that it is not going to bring you satisfaction in the long run. It only says that it's somewhat challenging. Even cracking cat is somewhat challenging. Even cracking cat is somewhat challenging. But does not it bring you happiness? Does not it bring you growth? All those things. So yes, similarly, Epicureanism is going to bring you happiness and satisfaction. So let's read further, students. What does the passage imply about the fundamental difference in hedonists and in how hedonists and Epicureans perceive the concept of freedom? Take a brief pause. There are a couple of options which need to be discussed, a couple of options that seemed to be close. Now let me reveal the answer, students. The answer is option B. For the hedonist, freedom is the capacity to act upon every impulse, chasing every impulse, chasing every opportunity for sensory gratification. That is how the hedonist views freedom, that I will pursue every opportunity, every impulse of sensory gratification. For the Epicurean, the one who follows Epicureanism, freedom is the capacity when you become unswayed, when the impulse does not impact you that much, when you maintain balance, when you deliberately take a step backward and you maintain a moderate and balanced way of life, so that you can maintain happiness for a longer duration. So you remain unswayed by the impulse, by sensory gratification, somewhat ascetic level of detachment. So B is how they clearly distinguish and pursue freedom. That's how they perceive freedom. There was one option, team, which seemed somewhat close. Absence of external constraints. That's what makes A incorrect, students. Hedonists view freedom as the absence of external constraints. No, they do not view it as the absence of external constraints. In fact, this is alien information. Nowhere in the passage was it written that there is any absence of external constraints in the world of hedonism. Hedonism only says that now there is an opportunity to pursue pleasure, so go ahead and pursue that pleasure. Chase sensory gratification. So it is upon you. It is upon you to take that path. It does not mean that there are no constraints in the path. In fact, the constraints in that path have not been discussed at all. That is why A is incorrect. The hedonistic way is simply pursuing pleasure, acting on every impulse that gives you satisfaction. There was one more. C. Yes. Hedonists define freedom through the accumulation of power to dictate one's environment. So there is no power accumulation being discussed, dictating the environment being discussed. No. You're not dictating the environment. You are only looking for opportunities in the environment which can give you pleasure. So whatever opportunities, whatever chances, whatever impulses come your way, you chase them and you look for happiness. So it's not that you are accumulating power. It's not that you have suddenly become power hungry. It's not that you have become power hungry and you are trying to dictate your environment. You are trying to dictate everyone around you. No. It's not that. You are only looking for the impulses in the environment which can give you happiness. So that's how C is incorrect, students. And I hope you have understood whatever I discussed with you in this particular discussion. So with that, I'll take your leave. Thank you so much.